Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Sorry for the delay, some technical issues. So, Mr. Mohammed, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for accepting our invitation for Techni Summit in general. Firstly, we'd like to shed some light on the investment scene post-COVID, if we're post-COVID, and the amount of impact on the ecosystem, investment-wise.
Okay. I think let me talk generally and then focus on my area of expertise, which is fintech. In general, I think the investment scene has seen a lot of interest from regional, international, local investors in certain segments. If I name them, would be the e-commerce, fintech, health tech, on top of the sectors that are attracting.
They're just asking me to raise your voice because people out there can't hear you.
Okay, so that's the majority of or the main sectors that are attracting investment post COVID-19. Other sectors have suffered a lot, but basically all the technology sectors are attracting investment. What's happening here is that even before COVID-19, all these tech sectors were very attractive for investments. But what happened with COVID-19 is just an accelerator. You know that all the evaluation that's happening for companies in the sector is based on the future. These companies are not making money. These companies are still burning a lot of cash. So basically, the way why investors are interested in them, because the future. They are betting on the future. What happened with COVID-19, it canceled 2 years, at least 2 years in the future and bring it forward. So you will find a lot of companies worldwide, starting from Apple, starting from Ant Financials in China, even in Egypt, companies like Fawri in the stock exchange have seen a huge multiples adjustment. And this is not because of their numbers or their business have grown dramatically, but because of the way their future came closer. So this is what we see. The main winners of this thing, of this post-COVID-19 is basically the e-commerce and everything around it. So fintech would be an enabler for e-commerce, so that's why it grew. Health tech also as a way of doing health services without having to do touch. Worldwide, they call this segment stay-at-home services, things that has to do with receiving service as a citizen or as a consumer without having to do a contact with someone.
How long is it going to take? You guys are going to focus on the stay-at-home industries for how long?
I think that's the future, because even if the COVID-19 crisis have gone out our way, still the world is taking care that something like that can happen in the future. So basically, the world is now prepared. The world is prepared as companies, as also as consumers. People are now more ready, more eager.
I believe also that governments are working on their infrastructure, technical-wise, in order to pivot the road to such industries.
Absolutely. Government have taken that even before the COVID-19. The digital transformation and financial inclusion has been a word on the vocabulary of every government, and specifically if we look at Egypt, the government, central bank, and even the presidency represented by the Egyptian Payment Council have always talking about two things as the future for Egypt. So, but what happened to COVID-19? Things that would have been taking 2 years have happened in a couple of months.
From your point of view, and this is maybe this has nothing to do with our panel, but a question just came in my mind. When are we expecting people do everything that has to do with the banking and services and so on at the comfort of their home through a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop? Full services.
It's a journey, so it's not going to happen overnight. But every day that we see an improvement and more services, the things that are every startup, every company are trying to achieve is how can I offer the services in a more convenient way. And it is not only about technology, because if you look at banks, have been always advanced in their technology services. Internet banking and mobile banking has been always something that you can find in big banks in Egypt and outside. But what happened now is people are addressing the convenience factor. How can I give you a service in a customer experience that is very convenient and in the way you like it? I can take some risks, but make sure that you get it in a very easy way.
Let's do a very quick survey, and if startups here that has to do with e-commerce, please raise your hand. Any startup that has to do with the e-commerce? I can see some hands here, up there. Okay, my question is, what are the investors looking for, let's say the upcoming 5 years? What are you guys looking for, industries?
If I talk about myself, we'll be looking at, we are focused on Fintech, which is financial services offered through a mobile or a technical tool, and also about what we call digital services that are enabled by Fintech. There is a lot of inefficiencies that in many industries, one of them, as an example, is FMCG, that are completely untraditional in the way it is happening now. And a lot of startups are trying to digitize these services, and in their way to do this, there is always a Fintech play that comes in their way. So I'll give you an example. For example, there was a lot of e-commerce services that was happening before COVID-19, and all of this was the digital services that were offered was ahead of payment. Yani you start a transaction in a digital way, but you end it in a cash on delivery thing. So the last mile, or the last part, is the one that is seeing a huge change, which is even consumer that were always reluctant to do any electronic payment and were preferring the cash on delivery as a method, now are to a great extent accepting the new way.
What would you tell startups to do who are focusing on, taking all the startups that made good exits and so on, and trying to do the same thing, the same industry? What would you tell them?
You're not going to make a big difference if you focus on making similar to what exists now. So the market has a lot of gaps, and you have to look for a gap to fill. And this gap, the more it is new, it is not addressed by other startups, the more chance that you have to succeed. Because, I'll give an example from my sector. There is a lot of people coming to say, I will do a bill payment like Fawri. I will do payment gateways like many companies in the market. This is, of course, has a lot of potential, but it is very competitive. And for a startup to come in this space, will have to burn a lot of cash until they establish themselves. So this is something that's going to be very tough for a new startup to excel. But there is a lot of new areas. I would give a few of them, like digital lending in general, either for consumer or for SME. There is the data analytics part and things that has to do with AI and capability of giving the companies a way to make decisions based on data. There are always things that do with InsurTech. These are areas that are completely underserved, and they represent a huge potential for any startup to come in.
That would, follow up my question about, from your point of view, what makes a startup reach a unicorn level? Like, give us some advices.
Okay. Interesting. This is a very interesting
question. I know you're an expert when it comes to that.
As a founder and as a manager of a company, you don't think about this. You think about how can I increase the value of my company? How can I make it more attractive? And by building a corporate, automatically you will go your way in to be a unicorn. But you don't chase it. You don't think this is my goal, to be a unicorn. My goal is to be the biggest or the leading company in my sector, and to make sure that I have a value in the value chain of my ecosystem that are clear and growing day by day. This is how you automatically become a unicorn. You don't think about it and you don't chase it. If you chase it, you definitely will not make it, because you will be obsessed by evaluation. And this is a great mistake that's happening now. A lot of the startups are celebrating fundraising, they are celebrating evaluations, but this is not real. What is real is when you do a real exit and the investors get cash. This is when you have a real value.
What do you guys have for startups for, let's say, for 2021 as Disrupt? What's your strategy?
As I mentioned, we are focusing on certain areas within the fintech service. So things like digital lending is very interesting for us. Things like data analytics, using AI to as an alternative scoring mechanism. As I mentioned, InsurTech. Things have to do with digitizing services like FMCG sector that we already invested in one company in that sector. So we are focused on certain areas that we believe that completely underserved and has a huge potential in the Egyptian market. We have a very unique thing about Egypt. Egypt is a very young population, very much digitally connected, and a lot of the sectors here are completely beyond or lagging in terms of digitization. And once you digitize any services, the payment and the financial services will come on your way.
Okay, I'd like to take some questions in order to, like have the discussion. So if anyone have a question, please raise your hand. Just so I can see. Any questions? You have a question? Yeah. ليه دايما الاي كوميرس بلاتفورمز بتقابل مشكله في البيمنت؟ مظبوط السؤال؟ في البيمنت جيت اواي.
I don't think currently is a big issue. I mean, there is a lot of payment gateways players in the market, and they are all trying to add more value than just the normal payment. So I don't want to make names, but I mean, big companies, big platforms are offering multiple services for you as an e-commerce. Maybe the issue is in how to integrate with them, how to sign a contract and get live in a very short time. And I know that a lot of them are working on a more what we call a factory model. So to ease for SMEs and for startups to engage with their platform. But after the session, I can give you some names that you can contact for you to get this much easier than before.
We have another question here.
I was asking, what about virtual try-on tools that use augmented reality technology? Like virtually try-on eyewear, sunglasses, maybe some clothes, makeup. Okay, I will repeat the question. I'm asking about what are the potential for success for an ideal virtual try-on tools using augmented reality technology, like virtually try-on sunglasses, eyewear, makeup, maybe some clothes.
This is not my area of expertise, I have to tell you. But in general, I think
generally, what's the possibilities of VR in startups? Like the success. Well, actually, he can grant you success as well. It's something not for granted, but just generally.
Generally, I think for any startup to work, you have to have a very strong founding team, and not strong in terms of experience, but I mean people who can really have the capability to execute. So if you are a founder and you have certain capabilities and you are missing others, you have to look for partners or experts to help you to build what you have to do. Second thing is to look for the gap, I would say, in the market and try to address it in the customer experience, much easier customer experience than exists before. From my perspective, that's the two things that makes the difference.
Hello. Thank you for your speech, first. And second, I would like to ask you, how do you think startup businesses would benefit from mystery shopping? If you know the idea of mystery shopping, or like sending random customers as shoppers to have the whole experience of like a dine-in or in tourism or whatever. Regarding in our culture, it's not that we're not that aware of it, but it's still like beneficial to us all. Like for the shoppers, like it's a part-time job, they can make extra money, and for the business, they can know like maybe the feelings of their customers or whatever. So what do you think about that?
I think it's it is not far from our culture anymore. Yani most of the people who are doing technological product, they start with a friendly user trial, with a pilot, and then when they go live, they continuously look for customer feedback to improve the product. So one of these customer feedback methods is definitely Mr. Shopper. Either an audit which is very well planned, or Mr. Shopper using a third party. So this is, I think, part of any technological product build-up now. From my perspective, all the startups that I have seen or dealt with are either heavily engaged on this or using it at certain stages of their development of the new product.
Thank you so much. One last question. If you have one advice for startups that you would like to share, what would it be?
I think the one thing that I mentioned earlier, but I want to re-emphasize, is focus on building a company, because this is the product that you're going to sell. Don't chase fundraising. Don't get too much excited about evaluations. Focus on building a company that generates a value, and automatically the evaluations and the money and the exit will come on your way.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you.